Festival, the Night Floater Mythos. I've always been a solitary guy, a loner, content with my own company. This was especially true that last spring and summer before university. I'd broken up with my girl and my few friends had already left town, so I was on my own. I avoided all the local watering holes, in part to avoid the jerks I went to high school with, and instead I went for long walks after dark. It was a melancholy but peaceful time. I was saying goodbye to childhood. One cool night in late spring, I found myself walking the CN train tracks, heading west, smoking cigarettes and wondering what my life would be like when I started school in the fall. I'd been walking for about 45 minutes as the darkness took control. No trains passed and I met no one. I had gone as far as the fourth line, a distance of about 3 miles, when I became aware of a bright light off to my right. A fire. The fire was near an old abandoned farm silo that sat in the middle of a clearing north of the tracks, the numero uno party spot in our town. My guess was that somebody was having a bush party, and I almost turned away to slink off into the night. It was probably just a bunch of kids, and if there was anyone there I knew, they were probably people I didn't really want to see. But the fact was, I was lonely. Too lonely. On one level, I was enjoying the bittersweet angst, but it wasn't healthy. Oh well, I said to myself, maybe somebody will give me a beer as I crossed the tracks and headed towards the light. But as I drew closer, I started to realize things were not quite normal. I mean, for starters, where were all the cars? A dirt trail led out to the old silo, and some guys would drive the short, bumpy pathway and park in the dead grass beside the ruins of the former barn. Normally, there would be 3 or 4 vehicles. But tonight, nothing. And where were all the people? I couldn't see anyone standing around or milling about. Had somebody just started a grass fire and then left it? In the end, however, it turned out it wasn't a grass fire. Instead, around a small central fire, there were a number of small black candles, placed so as to form a pentagram. 13 candles. Had I just stumbled across a satanic ritual? Prudence told me to get away and get away as quickly as possible. But curiosity. I know, curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. I knelt down in the tall grass, where I would be invisible in the gathering gloom, but from where I could see the candles and the pentagram as clearly as if they had been on a stage. It turned out that I didn't have to wait long for the actors to appear. They came out of the ruins of the old barn, a motley crowd of thin, disheveled people, some stark naked in spite of the evening chill, moving hand in hand in some bizarre dance, an obscene conga line. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst of it was that the dancers were headless. Headless. They had no heads. They moved around the pentagram in a weird pirouette, and as I watched in horrified fascination, I wondered how they could see where they were going. I could hear a strange moaning sound from off in the distance, a banshee wailing that slowly faded out as the wind began to rise, and I wondered if it would blow out all the candles or start a real grass fire. I was backing up, preparing to get out of there, and not as careful as I should have been. But, they didn't have heads or eyes, so how could they possibly see me? But in the end, it turned out they did have heads. The heads came flying out of the night and swirled around above the headless dancing bodies like a flock of demonic birds. The heads circled around and around and around till I started to get disoriented watching them. Still, I noted a certain family resemblance in the circling orbs. The heads were pale, fish-belly white, with long black hair flowing up behind them. The faces, thin, pinched, and dirty. The eyes were red and glowing. I realized with a shock of horror that what I was staring at was the night floaters. The night floaters had been the night terrors, the boogie people of my childhood, a malignant cult of strange beings that could detach their heads from their bodies, the heads then being able to fly through the night to molest their victims. I remembered now that, as they flew, the heads made a moaning sound that faded to silence as they approached. And they could apparently animate their headless bodies and use them to chase and to strangle victims. In the end, it was the glowing red eyes that led to my undoing. I must have moved too violently or made a noise, for suddenly one of the ugly female heads stopped in mid-flight to stare daggers at me. Several of the other heads collided with her, knocking her sideways with a loud smack. It should have been funny, but it wasn't. She quickly regained her position, her blazing eyes still riveted on mine. And then they all saw me and flew at me. I ran. I didn't think I could outrun them. But I remembered there was an intersection with a brightly lit 24-hour gas bar. Only what? 300 yards? 3 football fields away? Could I make it? I took a quick look behind me. The floaters were right there, and now the headless bodies were shambling after me in hot pursuit. I stumbled onto the dirt trail, then jumped the drainage ditch and clambered onto the train tracks, where I figured I could run faster. I heard the blare of a horn as a beam of intense white light washed over me, blinding me. A freight train was bearing down on me. I threw myself to the right, buffeted by hot air as the train raced past me. I landed at the bottom of the drainage ditch, on the opposite side from the night floaters, my fall broken by thick weeds and stagnant water. The train was a long one, perhaps 100 cars, and as it passed, I crawled forward as quickly as possible and managed to reach the intersection and safety. I took a cab home from the gas station, and I got some strange looks from the driver due to my wet clothing and generally dazed expression. I stayed home nights from then on, although I was pretty sure that some disembodied heads perhaps, were outside my bedroom windows trying to stare in. Fortunately, I kept my drapes shut tight and soon left town for school. My parents also moved to another nearby town, so I never saw the silo again. And if the Google Street View is to be believed, it no longer exists. It was only recently that I had a sudden epiphany. I realized the date I had seen the pentagram and the candles and the night floaters was at the end of April. April 30th, in fact. Walpurgis knocked. The night when the forces of evil hold sway and the dead walk the face of the earth. Kinda a spring version of All Hallows Eve. All Hallows Eve or Halloween. Were the night floaters real? I never heard of them again after I left my hometown. Were the candles and the pentagram a ritual to summon them? Summon them from beyond? If I started a fire in my backyard, surrounded by a pentagram outlined by black candles, would it summon the night floaters? Walpurgis night will be coming up shortly. Should I try it? Would you? I dare you. The moral of the story? Sometimes the rites of spring are just plain wrong. If this is your first visit to my channel, please consider subscribing. My name is Warren, and I write and tell original ghost stories and original horror stories featuring such cryptids as the night floaters, werewolves, and the black-eyed children. So again, please consider subscribing. Please help me to reach my goal of 2,500 subs. Till midnight. Cheers. Pictures used in today's video, courtesy of Pix here, that's PX here, while the music was the classic Ghost Processional by that patron of the internet, Kevin MacLeod.